Turning to John chapter 18. John chapter 18, thank you so much for being here on this Sunday morning. We are so grateful to see each one in the house of God. Thank you to those of you who are joining us online. We welcome you as well. Last Sunday, we celebrated Easter. And today, I want to take you back in time to just before the crucifixion. We're going to be going to Pilate's judgment hall. I want to take you to that place where the crowd cried, "Crucify." If you found John chapter 18, would you say amen? Let's stand together. We're going to begin the reading at verse 28 and conclude at verse 40. John chapter 18, 28 through 40. Then led they Jesus from Caiaphas unto the hall of judgment, and it was early. And they themselves went not into the judgment hall, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. Pilate then went out unto them and said, "What accusation bring ye against this man?" They answered and said unto him, "If he were not a malefactor, he would not have delivered him up unto thee." Then said Pilate unto them, "Take ye him, and judge him according to your law." The Jews therefore said unto him, "It is not lawful for us to put any man to death, that the saying of Jesus might be fulfilled, which he spake, signifying the death he should die." Then Pilate entered into the judgment hall again, and called Jesus, and said unto him, "Art thou the King of the Jews?" Jesus answered him, saying, "Sayest thou this thing of thyself, or did others tell it thee of me?" Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Thine own nation and the chief priests have delivered thee unto me. What hast thou done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight, that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence." Pilate therefore said unto him, "Art thou a king then?" Jesus answered, "Thou sayest that I am a king. To this end was I born, and for this cause came I into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Everyone that is of the truth heareth my voice." Pilate saith unto him, "What is truth?" And when he had said this, he went out again unto the Jews, and saith unto them, "I find in him no fault at all. But ye have a custom that I should release unto you one at the Passover. Will ye therefore that I release unto you the King of the Jews?" Then cried they all again, saying, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a robber. Father in heaven, bless now the reading of your word. Anoint these lips of clay, the minds and hearts of the hearers as well. It's in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, amen. You may be seated. I want to take you to the place where this happened. Where is the place where the conversation and the actions that we just read were carried out? The traditional site in Jerusalem for the trial of Jesus was the Antonia Fortress, which is on the other side of the city. For centuries, people believed that the fortress is where Jesus was tried and condemned to die. But in the early 1970s, excavation work was done to the north side of the city, and they found what they believe are the remains of Herod's palace. This palace is an amazing complex with walls that were 30 cubits high the entire way around. There were fortification towers and a palace that was beyond belief. It's believed that there was a garden, and it's also believed that there were barracks for soldiers where they would live. Now, this jives with what the Bible tells us in Mark chapter 15 and verse 16 when it says about the soldiers leading Jesus into the hall, the praetorium. This was very likely, I think almost assuredly, in Herod's palace. Herod is dead at this time, but who is governor? Pontius Pilate. And it's very likely that Pontius Pilate is living in Herod's palace, the one who would build it. What they believe is that there was a gate on the outer wall. This gate was likely the secret gate. It was the gate for Herod to escape. If the city were being taken, he could go out through this single gate. And in the excavation, they did not find two gates or three. They found one. And so they believe that this is the gate. There was a wall, and they believe there was another wall at this gate, sort of a secret gate. You would go up this large set of stairs to a gate, and you would enter a hall, which was in between the walls. To the left would be a set of stairs that would go up to a bema stone, a judgment seat. And if you would go back down the stairs into the judgment hall, through the gate, you would be inside of Herod's palace. It would mean that as Pilate were sitting there, he would be able, if he were on the judgment seat, he would be able to look down the stairs to where Jesus no doubt would have been standing and those gathered with him. But remember, the Jews would not enter in. They didn't want to become unclean. And so they stayed outside, and that judgment seat would have faced where the Jews were assembled. Someone told me about this place when we were in Jerusalem last year, and they explained why it made sense that this was the spot where Jesus would have been sentenced to death, tried before Pilate. And they tried to explain to me where it is, but I need a GPS to get to Beaver Springs, okay? I've told you that before. I'm terrible with directions, and I could not find this spot in Jerusalem. It's a spot that most tours and such don't even take you on. And one day, the last day that we were there, we had a free day. We were not with the group. And Joanne and I had wandered all over Jerusalem. And we were tired. And we went out of one of the city gates and began to walk along the outside of the wall. And we came down and we made a right at the corner of the city wall and began to walk down this beautiful path. And there was a grassy area toward what's called the Shaffer gate. And it was beautiful. And so we stopped and we began to take pictures and we began to look at it, and we were tired, so we sat down on some park benches that were there. And while I was sitting in that beautiful spot, I looked behind me, I looked at the city wall, and I saw these sort of steps going up into this place, and I went over and I began to look at it. There was just a little sign that explained how this worked, and I realized that this was the place where very likely this trial and this judgment happened. It didn't hit me really until I came home and began to watch various videos about how this would have worked and the arguments for this being the place where Jesus was sentenced to death by Pilate. As I thought about it and as I looked at the evidence, I believe that this was the correct spot. I'm not here to debate archaeology with you, but I believe that this is the place where they cried, "Crucify." I believe this is the place where they wanted Barabbas. I believe this is the place where they said, "Let his blood be on us and on our children." And I cannot tell you what that has done to me. Because in that excavation, a few of those original stones, first century, dating back to the first century, are there, and you can see them and you can touch them. And I cannot tell you what that did to me to stand in that place and to reflect standing in that place. I've heard in my mind the crowd chanting, "Crucify," and that demand that they make. But to think that this is the place where that happened. There was a place. It was a common place. It was a place that people passed by every day. Soldiers, no doubt, went in and out of that gate. Judgments were made in that hall. But likely to the people living in Jerusalem at the time, and it was a magnificent compound, but the reality is they were probably used to it. And as they traveled down that road that went past that gate, they probably on their daily lives didn't think much about it. How many of you, when we drive through Middleburg, think about the courthouse as being a special place? Well, if you've been sentenced in there or paid a big fine, maybe you think about the courthouse a little more. But I would say that most of us drive by the courthouse sometimes on a daily basis and we don't give it a thought. I think that's a little bit of an idea of what they likely were thinking. There was a place. Did they realize that in that place, on that Gabbatha, that pavement, in that common place, did they understand the impact on eternity? Did they realize what they did in that place that day? That place represents their lives. That place represents the actions of a moment which impacted all of eternity. And it's in that place that the final decision is made, the condemnation is sealed, and the crowd parts as Jesus begins the painful and shameful walk to the place of the skull. If you've ever been to a memorial such as for Flight 93, or you have been to Ground Zero at the Twin Towers Memorial, you know there is a feeling of awe when I stand there at those gaping holes in the ground with the water flowing by and the black marble all around and the names etched in stone, and you look up into the clear blue sky and you think about what happened. There is an awe, and I think to myself, this was the place. You go to Gettysburg, and it's just grassy fields today with monuments and fences. But why do people go there by the thousands every year? Because that is the place where a significant battle took place, significant battles that changed the whole trajectory of our nation. That is the place. You say, Pastor, what are you driving at this morning? At that place of Gabbatha, the stone, it was at that moment, it was at that time in their real lives that crowd made the most consequential decision of their lives. Barabbas over Jesus. And I want to ask you today, in what place are you standing? Where are you at today? You see, we think that maybe there'll be this moment when God will speak to us and we'll have this time for choosing. The time for choosing is every day. The time and the place for choosing is right now. It is not sometime in the future. This is the place. Now is the time. And the decisions that you're making in the everyday will affect you for time and eternity. You say, I can't think about eternity right now. Well, friend, that's the place. You say, I'm just trying to live my life. I'm just trying to make it. That's the place. You say, we're trying to make ends meet. We're working insane hours. We don't have much time for Jesus. Friend, that's the place. There's somebody that's saying, I'm tired of this marriage. The person I'm married isn't who I thought they were. I'm moving on. Friend, that's the place. Somebody else says, I'm tired of fighting the battle with my kids. I'm going to let them do what they want to do. I'm going to change everything. Friend, that's the place. Somebody else is saying, I'm tired of the rules. Being a Christian is so restrictive. Friend, that's the place. Somebody else is saying the church isn't inclusive enough. I want a place where I don't feel condemned for anything. Friend, that's the place. Someone else says, I've experienced too many hurts in my life. If God loved me, He wouldn't have allowed them to happen. Friend, that's the place. Somebody else says there are hypocrites in the church. If other people aren't real, why should I be? Friend, that's the place. Somebody else says, I don't want to serve God seriously now. I'll wait till later. That's the place. The daily grind is the place. Our lives are the place. Every morning we wake up, every day we walk through, that's the place where eternal decisions are made. And this morning, if you're here in person or you're watching online, I want you to treasure the value of this moment, of this place in time. Today is the day of salvation. This is the place. This is your pavement. This is your time of choosing. And mark my words, even if you don't choose, you are choosing. To not choose is to choose. To not act is to act. You can walk away from here on an ordinary Sunday. It's not Easter. It's not Palm Sunday. It's an ordinary back to the daily grind. But this is the place These moments are the time. If you would travel the roads away from 1653 Creek Road and you were to go various directions from this little crossroad, you would find many lost souls who stared at the altars at the first church. They stared at the altars at the second church. And now at the third church building here, they stare at the altars. And they've had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to make things right with God. But they chose in this place to walk away. And it has affected their eternity. For good and bad, hundreds, I say thousands of people have done eternal business with God in this ordinary place in Snyder County, USA. Many lost souls could look back to this place and say, that's the place where I cried crucify. That's the place where I chose not to serve God. That's the time, that's the place when I chose Barabbas over Jesus. These people have sat in our pews. They have knelt at our altars. They have taught our classes and preached from our pulpits. But somewhere, someplace, on an ordinary day, they made a choice. Barabbas, they cried. Crucify, they exclaimed. His blood be on us and our children, they said. And that became the place. Our everyday moments are the place where eternal business is done and where eternal destiny is decided. I have no fancy message for you this morning. I have no alliterated outline. I just have this message. Your everyday life is the place. It is the place of choosing. Your time, your place to choose, Jesus or Barabbas. We're standing together and we're turning to number 129 in the chorus book. Are you standing at Gabbatha? Are you standing at the pavement, the place? Are you deciding with the crowd, the group think? No doubt as Pilate would go in through that first gate into the judgment hall, and he would talk to Jesus again, and those words we read are recorded. No doubt the crowd that's assembled there were talking among themselves. And they, in this mob mentality, had decided that Jesus was no good, that Jesus had to die. And I believe that they began to talk one to another, and they began to influence one another, to the point where they cry out in unison with a voice that reverberates off of those city walls, crucify him, crucify him. Friend, if you're standing in the place, don't listen to the crowd around you. Ignore the crowd. Jesus is the only one who matters. And every day we are in that place of choosing. We're in that place of judgment. Every day is a judgment call. Every day we're taking a step. Every day we're choosing to serve Jesus or reject him. If you've been saved since 1913, I thank God for that. But the reality is that you wake up every day and you choose to serve Jesus. Every day is a place of opportunity. Every day is a day when you could go wrong if you so chose. Do you think Satan gives up? Do you think Satan says, oh, they've decided to follow Jesus, I guess I'll just leave them alone? No! He presents opportunity at the pavement. Opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. And in those moments that he presents, it's way easier to cry crucify. It's way easier when the crowd is revved up to cry Barabbas. Imagine if one little soul had said, no, Jesus. I choose Jesus. I choose Jesus. And maybe there were. But imagine if one little soul had slipped up a hand. No, I don't want Barabbas. I choose Jesus. That can be you this morning. As we close, a simple little message with a simple little song. I have decided to follow Jesus. I hope you can testify with us this morning. But if you can't, this is your Gabbatha. This is your pavement. This is your place of choosing. And you can look back at it and you can leave here and say, boy, it was in that place that I chose Jesus. Or you will look back at in eternity someday and say, that's the place I rejected him. You're at the place. The decision is before you. You cannot avoid it. And I'm asking you as we stand in this place to choose Jesus.